Now this test here is going to be Powertrain Fundamentals Test 7. Powertrain Fundamentals Test 7. The 4x4 drive line includes all the same components as a rear-wheel drive line. Doesn't it? Think about the way that question is written now.
Technically, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it does. The thing about it is, it's just got more. If it was written the other way, if it was written that the 4x2 drive line includes all the same components as a 4x4, you know, 4x2 don't have everything that's in a 4x4, but the 4x4 has everything that's in a 4x2. It just adds some more stuff to it. 4x4 drive line includes all the following: a transfer case, front drive shaft, front drive axle, a flexible wind-up coupling. It doesn't have a flexible wind-up coupling. Not on the four-wheel drive, you know, like on pickups and all.
Well, do they all have a drive shaft?
They got a drive shaft going up front, yeah. Goes from the transfer case to the front drive axle. And the ones in the viscous coupling is found only on part-time four-wheel drive vehicle. That's false. They're on full-time. If it's a full-time four-wheeler, it's going to have a viscous coupling, and I talked about that last week. That's kind of like a fan clutch. And the more that you know, it's providing power to all the wheels, but it allows for slippage too, because it's got that, you know, thick stuff in there that's being cut by those things. The viscous coupling construction is similar to clutches used in automatic transmissions, and that's true. You know, you got them back and forth there. That medium that they've got in there sort of, you know, causes them to transmit but still be able to slip with controlled force. The mid-size vehicles are the only vehicles that do not use a reduction shift fork. That's false. Whenever you're, there's driveline worksheet about tearing these transfer cases apart and putting them back together. And transfer cases, like off these pickups, have got a planetary gear set in there. Now, what are they doing with a planetary gear set? Why do they need a planetary gear set in the transfer case? Well, the transfer case, what does a planetary gear set do in an automatic transmission? It provides for different gear ratios, right? All right, now everybody that's grabbed the handle on a four-wheel drive is going to see four-wheel low, four-wheel high. When you put it at four-wheel low, you're using that planetary gear set to give you your low speed, right? Yeah. I figure you had probably drove a Humvee or something, somewhere.
Yeah, when I retired,
they were still driving Jeeps, were they? Yeah. Well, they were four-wheel drive. All right. Yeah. I had one of those 47 model Willis Jeep I traded my cousin out of. And back in those days, you could buy, and this was back in the early 80s, you could buy all of the parts to overhaul the engine in a 47 Willis Jeep at Enterprise Auto Parts. I mean, at Dothan Auto Parts for not much money. And I took that thing apart and put pistons, put rings and bearings and stuff in it, had a rope top rear main seal and that kind of thing. And so I got it in some gear that I knew was forward gear, so it wouldn't even run when I got it. And so I hooked a trailer hitch on the back of my dad's 66 Chevrolet pickup truck. And I took out across that field, pulling that thing with the engine turning, you know. And when it fired up, it was in four-wheel drive, and it pushed me all over the place before I could get it stopped. There wasn't anybody riding on it. I was just dragging it with a tow bar. But that little sucker it burned gas like crazy, and it wouldn't go about 45 miles an hour without going, you know, it's an old Army Jeep, is what it was, you know. But it didn't make a good hunting buggy. I sold it to somebody later. Let's see. Technician A says with the rear output shaft locked to the drive sprocket, the torque is transmitted to the rear axle through the drive chain and driven sprocket and rear drive shaft. Technician B says with the rear output shaft locked to the drive sprocket, torque is transmitted to the front axle through the drive chain, drive sprocket, and front output shaft. Who is correct about that?
Technician B.
Technician B. You know, there's a chain in that transfer case too. Technician A says a 1998 and newer midsize vehicles, the clutch coil duty cycle is increased under heavy throttle. And the clutch coil being in the transfer case, right? Technician B says on 98 and newer model midsize vehicles, and this is mostly Ford stuff we're reading about right now, the clutch coil relay duty cycle is increased in off-throttle conditions at vehicle speeds above approximately 30 miles per hour. Who's right about that? Let's see. See, what happens on that clutch coil? That clutch coil is what enables you to get shift on the fly. It's got like an air conditioner style clutch in there that can pull that thing in and lock it in. and it's pretty handy to be able to be driving along, and all of a sudden you need four-wheel drive. You punch your button there, and you go to town.
Yours on the desk,
Or where'd you put your oil filter at?
right there in the floor, right there.
By the car?
Right there.
Yeah. Show him where it is. He needs to pour it in the car. Hey, Demetrius, when you get that thing and you know it's full, use this Sharpie to add 3,000 to what's on it. That's it. Somebody borrowed my Sharpie and didn't give it back. Huh?
It's in the office.
Oh, it is. Lay it and add 3,000 to what's on that thing. Write it on that tape under the hood. You know what I'm saying? And okay. Now let me see. That's something we're under the gun on because she's got to have that car back at lunchtime. She drives back to the other campus at 12. Let's see. Technician A says viscous coupling housing is a sealed unit filled with a combination of an alcohol, waste fluid, and air. Technician B says viscous coupling discs are coated with a ferric nitrocarburized coating. That's Technician B. Number 9. Why does a transfer case contain a planetary gear set? I asked you that a while ago. What's the answer to it? Can you give me an answer? You can answer this or get what's behind door number 4. What do you think? What did you say? B. He figured it out for torque multiplication. Torque multiplication is good. It's our friend. You want to, if you're putting in a little bit and you want a lot coming out, torque multiplication is the name of the game. 10. Technician A says the ring gear is always in motion. Technician B says the carrier assembly is held stationary when the vehicle is in motion. Who's correct about that? Neither one of those. Both of these guys are buffoons. Okay? You got that? All right. Some of this self-study stuff here. All right. You got that? Everybody ready? Let's jump on over here to Powertrain Fundamentals Test 8. And we may be through early enough where we can get out and work some more before we go to lunch, and that would be a good thing. During a neutral coast down test, a vibration remains the same. Now this is about noise, vibration, and harshness. This is a really important test. When I was at the Ford, I went to Ford school on this NVH stuff, and there's vibration analyzers that you get to where you can, the one we were using, you put a vibration sensor up there on something that's resonating with a vibration. This seems kind of dumb, but it works. You put this, like for instance, if I've got a vibration in the car, and it's sitting still, driving, whatever, I get it to where it's doing a vibration. I put the sensor from this vibration analyzer, which looks kind of like a scan tool or whatever, up there on that sun visor, and it's bouncing, and it gives me the frequency of that vibration. And what I need to do then is I need to determine, based on the frequency of that vibration, what component matches that frequency in some way, and then I can go to the component that's causing it. And at the end of the course that we did, this guy put a couple of cars out of balance by adding washers to stuff that was about like one of them. He put a whole bunch of washers under one of the bolts on the torque converter to throw the flywheel of the torque converter out of balance. And when you give it the gas, like that. And we had to actually do the math and figure out from looking at this is turning at this RPM at this time and this vibration at this frequency. We need to know that the engine. See, this sounds complicated, but it's something that people have to do if you're really, like if you're selling cars like Lincolns or Cadillacs or any kind of car, and you're charging the big bucks and there's a vibration, you don't just throw the car away, and you don't start slamming parts on it. It can have a vibration in one of the accessories. It can have vibration in the engine, the transmission, the ring gear can be out of round. There's all kinds of stuff. You got to be able to track that down. You know what I mean? That vibration analyzer costs $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. It's real expensive. It's super expensive. But I mean, it'll tell you. You can figure it out if you can do the math. They actually got some programs that you punch the numbers in, and it'll tell you. It's either, like for instance, you got to know the size of the crank pulley. You got to know the size of the AC compressor pulley, the size of the torque converter, the size of the water pump. I mean, not the torque converter, but the alternator. And then a first order vibration is one that only has one, like a tire with one bump on it. A second order vibration will be a tire with two bumps on it. A third order vibration will be a tire with three bumps on it. Like if it's shaking 3 times every time this component spins around, that's a third order vibration. All that. Everybody's eyes are glazing over up. They're turning into a skeleton.
My town car started, the steering wheel started vibrating.
Yeah, there you go.
So when it balanced the tires on it,
Yeah.
it rotated when it balanced it.
Right.
And it calmed it down a little bit. But it's not still got just a little bit of trouble.
You may have a tire that's out of round or something. Either that or one that they didn't balance good. During a neutral coast down test, the vibration remains the same. Of the following components, which is the most likely source of the condition? A, engine accessories. B, torque converter. C, tire and wheel. Or D, crankshaft.
See?
Huh?
See?
It's going to be tire and wheel, more likely than anything else. Because you're not pulling, sometimes if I'm trying to find a vibration and I'm trying to figure out if it's in the engine or not, I'll shut the engine off driving down the road, see if I still feel it. I may be going 60, 70 miles an hour to kill the engine. And if I'm still feeling it, I know it ain't the engine. So I'm going to look somewhere else. See what I'm saying? During steering input test 1, driving through wide turns with the vehicle in gear, a noise gets worse. Which of the following causes is most likely responsible? A, tire and wheel imbalance. B, worn wheel bearings. C, crankshaft out of balance. Or D, prop shaft out of balance.
B.
Prop shaft being the drive shaft, right?
B.
That's number 2. That's going to be B. You can probably figure that out. Worn wheel bearing, more likely. Whenever I was showing some Harrison yesterday, of course, that car little white car that Harrison, let me put that hub bearing in, that little, what the thunder kind of car that was, Garrett? What was that? Toyota Corolla. Yeah, we had that Mazda in here, and I got cross those. But anyway, we drove that thing, and that was the worst sounding wheel bearing I've ever heard. If it's a little bit rough, a lot of times you can swerve back and forth and load and unload the bearing. By swerving, you can tell which one it is. And you couldn't make no difference on that. That bearing was just raw. It was really bad. Which of the following can you do using the keypad on the electronic vibration analyzer? This is, obviously from a handout. Number 3.
D.
A, freeze readings. B, record readings. C, all of the above. Now they have, several different grades of these analyzers, and some of them are super expensive. And most of us, most of the vibrations are going to be tires anyway on cars nowadays, but they can be other places. Which of the following tools would be the best to use to balance a prop shaft? EVA with a strobe light, a reed tachometer, a 100 GSP 9700 series, or a special tool number WW6454. How about an EVA with a strobe? Electronic vibration analyzer with a strobe light. Got me? Put marks on there, and it actually, whenever you're spinning it around, it flashes that strobe and it'll tell you where the light place is. You remember how we were balancing a drive shaft, guys, to start with? You'd have I told you to put the drive shaft out of balance by putting them clamps on there. So what you do is, you're going to raise this thing up, and put this, and you're going to get a 5-gallon can or something. Put it on jack stand so that the back wheels can't, the traction wheels are not going to, pull it off there and run over you. And so, put that thing off the ground, and you spin it up. You're going to be under there looking at the drive shaft, and you're going to take a bucket or something that's got just the right, or maybe a jack stand that you can put, and you're going to take like a carpenter's pencil that's got a heavy piece of lead in it, and you're going to ease it up there. And it's best to actually, put a wire brush against the drive shaft where you're going to do this so you have a smooth place to work. Because, the drive shafts aren't painted, they're rusty, unless they're aluminum. All right, then you just start going to touch it. While that drive shaft's spinning and the vibration is there, if you know that it's a drive shaft, then you'll be able to tell because it's got does the drive shaft spin faster or slower than the tires?
It has to spin fast.
Fast has been faster. Yeah, it's been usually about 3 or 4 times as fast. All right, so you can kind of pick up on the fact that this is faster than a tire vibration, and it'll come and go with speed. You find that speed where it's vibrating. You just do touch that side of that spinning drive shaft with that pencil. Just do touch it. Don't ram it against it. You just are going to let it touch. All right, and then after you've done that, you switch it off, and one side of that drive shaft where that pencil will be a mark. In other words, where it touch that pencil, when it's doing this, it'll have a mark on it. And then you put those 2 4 or 5 or whatever hose clamps you got. The screw on that hose clamp makes a wonderful weight, right? So you put it on there and you put 2 clamps on there so both of those screws are together on the opposite side of the drive shaft where the pencil mark was. And then you drive it again on the lift and see if it's smoother. If it's not, you move the things about 30 degrees apart, the screws, loosen it up so that they're 30 degrees apart and directly opposite this 30-degree gap is your pencil mark. You can keep fooling with those things. You can get that drive shaft just as smooth. How many of you guys ever balanced a ceiling fan?
How do you balance a ceiling fan?
You ever had a ceiling fan you put up there and it's going, just all over the place? Well, I got up there and I put these quarters, get some dried off. I just stack a couple of quarters on top of one of the blades, turn it on. I kept fooling around, moving them quarters around. Man, you make that ceiling fan run so smooth. You better put them quarters on there so they don't slang off there, because they'll bust a window. You know what I mean? So, and if kids get up there bouncing on the bed and they find the quarters, they'll steal them and they mess you all up. So it's best to use something they don't want.
Or you just glue it up there.
Huh?
Or you just super glue them on there.
You could, but then they go break the blade on the ceiling fan trying to get them off. Let's move. A truck with a tire size of LT 215/85 R16 is traveling 60 miles an hour. What's the first order frequency of this tire and wheel at that speed? That's a good question, isn't it? How are you going to figure that out? All right, let me ask you this. How would you determine, what I'm going to get you guys, I'm going to say, go get Webb to get his truck, right? Webb cuts the boss tires on his truck, big, strong tire. Okay, we got to determine how big Webb's tires are. Not Wes's, Webb's. Look at it,
That's 16.2.
yeah. How fast would he, how are we going to tell Webb's tires, how are we going to tell how big Webb's tires are? How big, I'm talking about the circumference of them, not the diameter of the circumference. You can take the diameter and get pi, and do pi, if you want to do the math or whatever. But if you don't want to fool with the math, how would you do that? I want to know how far it is all the way around his tire. This is an important question, guys. How would you do it?
Did you measure?
You could do that.
The radius.
What I would do is I would get out where I've got some room, and I would make me a chalk mark on a tire and a chalk mark on the pavement. And then I'm going to back the truck up until that chalk mark comes down on the pavement again. Then I'm going to make a chalk mark where it is. And then I'm going to get my tape measure and I'm going to measure between chalk marks. Got it? Okay. Huh?
Don't they make really long, like rulers?
They can, but that's aggravating as all get out. That's a pain. It's a lot easier to measure from chalk mark to chalk mark than it is wrapping around a tire. Now, if you got a tire in the air, you can do that. So how far around your tire do you think it is?
I got a 31-inch tire, so it'll be 285.
Yeah. Now, outside diameter? That's going to have a lot to do with how many turns it makes in a mile, right? Okay, so 5,280 feet in a mile. This is important now. I'm not just woofing. 5,280 feet in a mile. All right. So you've got. This was funny. I asked everybody in here. I says 5,280 feet. If the car is 10 feet around, how many times it roll in a mile? Some of the guys are getting our calculators out. 528. Just take a zero at the end of it. All right. So basically, if you're going. When you get those numbers, and it's good to play around with this stuff because you can get your head wrapped around it. You'll be able to tell what the first order frequency of the tire and wheel is at that speed, and that's basically going to be the hertz. I mean, how many times is that tire spinning? How many rounds is it making in a second? That's what you're after. Because if you've got that, and you know what the frequency or vibration is, you can determine if it's a tire or a wheel, or if it's something else, maybe it's a first or a second order vibration. Anyway, the answer to that one there is C, 11.4. 60 miles an hour is turning 11.4. That's the first order frequency. A truck with LT 255 60R16 tires is traveling 60 miles an hour. If it has an axle ratio of 355 to 1, which of the following is closest to the propeller shaft frequency?
42.6.
Huh?
42.6.
It's actually 46.
Dang it.
All right. So it's turning, fast. And the tire, see, get it done? All right. Did you take it back to her? Okay. Well, you can take it back in a minute. She'll call me in a minute. She may come walking in here. You got it ready for her to take it? Okay. So is it off the lift and legs that one? Okay, that's good. All right. There you go. Let's see. A vehicle's 6-cylinder engine is running at 2,520 RPM. What's the engine firing frequency in hertz?
7.
Think about revolutions per minute. You got me? You understand that? Okay, so hertz is how many times per second?
10.
Okay, revolutions per minute divided by 60 is how many revolutions per second? Can you do the math? Get your cell phone and bust off a calculator and see how much it is. See if
Somebody
it,
tried to argue with me with the RPM station.
Huh?
Someone tried to argue with me. That's what I'm-
revolutions per minute.
That's what I said. And they were like,
Well, they didn't know Webb well enough to know that he's smart. That's what it was.
we only did 2520 divided by.
Yeah, 22,520 RPM divided by 60.
60.
Yeah. Revolutions per minute, and hertz is hertz is how many times per second? Hertz is cycles per second.
That's 42.
42. Is that what you come up with? Yay! So that's going to be B, isn't it?
Why would you divide it by 60?
Well, let's think about that for a minute. If it's 2,520 revolutions per minute, and you divide that by 60, then 60 is going to go into 2,520 42 times, right? Okay, so that thing is going to be firing 42 times per second. Right? That's the engine firing frequency is what you're
So
after.
how did you know to divide it by 60?
60 seconds in a minute. And the second is the division for hertz. See what I'm saying? So 60 seconds in a minute, and that's going to be 42. So you've got basically, so the engine firing frequency. All right. So if you've got the engine firing frequency is typically, though, multiplied by 3. Did you know that? The engine firing frequency is multiplied by 3. Just because of, so basically the right answer to that's 126 because of it's multiplied by 3. This sounds complicated, but
Okay,
if I'm going too fast for you, it's all in the handout.
So what's the answer?
Yeah, that's basically supposed to be C there. Yeah,
C?
yeah, C.
So why would you divide it by 3?
This,
Well, I mean, times by 3.
that's the nature of engines. You got a 4-stroke cycle, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, basically. I got a handout I'm going to make available to you guys so you can so you can read about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? So don't be confused by that. A V8 engine has a crank pulley diameter of 9 inches and a generator pulley diameter of 3 inches. What's the generator frequency of an engine, and a generator being the alternator, right? At 2,400 RPM. Okay, if it's got a 9-inch crank pulley and a 3-inch, you're going to take 24 and do what? Frequency would be in hertz, right? Well, sort of, but now you're thinking 2,400 RPM, and we're talking seconds again.
No.
But on that one, you're actually going to do the math on the pulley. So the alternator is going to be 3 times as fast as the engine. So what is the engine's 2,400 times 3 is what?
7,200? Huh?
What did he say? What's 3 times 2,000?
it's 72.6.
Yeah, okay. That's why he said 7,200, right? I thought he said 7,200. That sounded crazy. No, 7,200. Okay, that's right. So 7,200. Okay, now what is 60 into 7,200?
Was what?
What's 60 into 7,200?
60 and 7,200 gonna be probably
120. That's that. You got it, man. Very good. Okay, so that's actually the hertz. It's 120 hertz. So if your vibration analyzer has got a vibration at 120 hertz at 2,400 RPM, you go, what's the alternator? So that's because you see how you can parse that stuff and figure out what's what. Which of the following components is most likely cause of a vibration that has a 5th order tire and wheel frequency? 5th order, my goodness.
Distorted ring gear.
no, that's gonna be a B.
What about a worn CV joint?
That would be clicking.
Yeah, a CV joint, Something wrong with a CV joint there, depending on what it can be. What's the most likely cause of a vibration that has a frequency twice that of the engine in a 4-cylinder engine? What do you think? Believe it or not, it's the exhaust system.
Exhaust system.
There was a Chevrolet S10. Let me tell you this story that I had, and this is important too. So don't blow me off on this story. We got this Chevrolet S10 came in over there at the Ford place. Now, how in the Sam Hill it wound up at the Ford place, I don't know. Occasionally somebody, if I got a Chevrolet, I'm gonna take it to the Chevrolet place. So I'm gonna get because they know where the weak links in the chain are, and you're probably gonna get the best work out of people at the Chevrolet place if you got a Chevrolet. That's just all there is to it. But if you got a Pontiac and you take it to the Honda place, you know, unless you happen to have somebody that's real familiar with a Honda, they're not going to give you real good service on it. Or if you got a Honda and you take it to the Ford place, you may not get good service there because they don't really know that Honda like the people at the Honda place do. But anyway, the car comes over there, and it was had a vibration in it. You just swear it had a skip. It was like, you know how an engine feels when it's skipping. And so I fooled with that darn thing trying to figure out the skip for a while. And I came to the conclusion after I fooled with it under the hood a while, and I went back to the tailpipe, and I put my hand by the tailpipe, and instead of getting a pop that I'd expect for a skip, I got a nice smooth, but it was still felt in the front like it was skipping. And I said, this is a vibration. This is something being transmitted to the frame from the engine. And so I called Ted, the the shop foreman at the Chevrolet place, Solomon Chevrolet. And he was over there then. And I said, Ted, I got a Chevrolet, LS10 Chevrolet with a 4.3 in it in here. It's just driving me nuts with this vibration. And he says, you won't ever fix that. I said, what? He said, you can get a motor mount like what goes on a Caprice and put on there, and it'll help it a little bit, but you won't never fix it. You'll work on that thing, you'll blue in the face, it'll still have that vibration. He said, we got a bunch of them in here, we can't fix them. And so I says, there's a lot of other people out there that needs their cars fixed, and I don't need to be wasting my time. So anyway, I just told the people what he had told me. I said, I'm not willing to, there's a certain amount of pride that you have in trying to figure something out when the other people couldn't, But if you're looking at, I got a bunch of other people out here lined up, and I know I can fix their cars. And so why do I need to spend 3 hours working on this while a bunch of them get mad and leave? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to give me trouble. I put it aside and I fix 4 or 5 and make 5 people happy. And this guy may be ticked off till I ain't done with his, but he can stay ticked off because I'm going to make these other folks happy. See, how many people can you make happy? That's what I'm telling you about your worksheets. If you got a big stack of worksheets, you do the quick ones first. See what I'm saying? You're going to do a triage. You know what I mean? Let's just see which ones that we can get done the quickest, and then we'll go back on these others that are more time consuming and all that. But we got to make sure we get them all done. Anyway, that's what the long and short. Sometimes you'll have a situation where, like I had a Crown Victoria, and I tell this story too. This guy, when I drive over close to the church over there at Ozark, where you got a long, slow up line on his Crown Vicky, it was a 95 model, and it would go boop, 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 skip. And the plugs and the wires and all that stuff had already been replaced in it. Nothing changed it. It was just like it always was. Boop, 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 boop. That was the only place he could do it. And if he could get 45 miles an hour, going up that long, and when somebody finds out that thing will act up at 46 miles an hour on a particular hill, that's where they want to drive, and that's how fast they want to drive. They could drive above or below that and they want to feel it, but they're going to get it on that speed so they can feel that and it can irritate them. And so he says, he's worried about this thing. So I looked at it and I checked it out, and I found out it was, dropping a cylinder, and first this one, then the other one, all that kind of stuff. So I called the people at Ford at the hotline, and I can tell this guy's not really talking straight with me, And so I was doing a little crime scene investigation here, like Horatio Kane. And I said, okay, I need you to come clean, and you need to talk to me about you're not really talking straight with me. And he was about to cry. He goes, we've never been able to fix any of those. He said, if you got a 95 model that's a Lincoln or a Crown Victoria, it's just going to do that, And he said, we can't get them to quit doing it. I don't know what's causing it. And I said, well, this is EEC5 with EDIS standalone ignition system. And the next year, the 96 model, they went to the engine controller was controlling the coils instead of having an EDS module. And I said, why don't we convert this thing to a 96 model by replacing the wire harness and all that, and we can make that go away. He said, well, I can't authorize a repair like that. I said, well, that would fix it, don't you think? Because the 96s didn't do it, and the 94s didn't do it, because the 94s were EEC4. You see, it was all by itself. It was that one, and they just figured they're going to push it down the road, So anyway, I told the guy, I said, look, there's nothing that we can do to fix it. It's designed into it, apparently. There's nothing we can do. And he was ticked off, but I said, I can't fix something that's designed into the car. Some things you're just not going to fix,